Hi, everyone. I wanted to take a few minutes and share with all of you the history of career and tech education, the growth of career and tech education, and just the what we think the future is going to look like. My name is Nathan Kanandike. I'm a CTE instructor here at Endeavor Academy in the Cherry Creek School District, and I look forward to sharing a little bit of CTE history with you to start. First off, it's important to remember that this country, even before we became the United States of America, and we had a very during the 16th and 17th century, we had a very Puritan makeup, meaning most of the people who came to the United States were exiled or at least coming to this area for opportunities. And one of those major opportunities was to practice their own religion. And so, definitely, education follows that same path. And one of the really interesting quotes I saw was that yes, it was mostly based on religion in those days, but also just the act of living and life itself was a trade. I mean, if you think about all of the things that you would have had to hand make, all of the self sufficiency that you would have had to do during this time period. I mean, you can't. You definitely would have had to have education, just not in the maybe same sense that we do today. From the 16th and 17th century, you start to see this development of apprenticeships in colonial America, and apprenticeships still exist to this day, obviously, and have requirements and things that definitely uh, have uh, uh, transcended time. Benjamin Franklin, for example, was an apprentice to start. And so you really have a focus on apprentice type education. There weren't formal schools yet, and even before the United States, uh, there were colonies that passed laws, kind of dictating who uh, and what and how for apprenticeships. Apprenticeships would have provided kind of five main things. They would have provided food and shelter for the apprentice. They would have taught the apprentice to read and write. There would have been a religious teaching component. They would have had the actual trade, teaching the different types of trade, and then there were industry secrets which they taught as part of apprenticeships, and those secrets being basically the math and the science that coexisted with the trade. 19th century, you see a rise of the land grants. You see a rise of federal power, a rise of technology. Think industrial revolution, and with all of that rise of the United States, really as a country, you see the rise of trade schools and trade school type education. So the map here is just all the land grant, which was land that the federal government granted to states to offer post-secondary or like college level education, what we think of as post-secondary today. Um, into the 20th century, you have two world wars that really like kind of drive the United States towards the realization that um, they need to um, offer trade education. And you definitely have a rise in the number of high school graduates, as the graph can see. Here's a list of some important legislation that passed Smith Hughes during World War One, and then many other federal legislation that started to drive funding for trade and career and tech education. So obviously, again, the forming of the ACTE, known now as the ACTA, but it was the formation of the National Society of Promotion of Industrial Education, was a big deal as well during the early 20th century. Later into the 20th century, you obviously have an automation component that starts to come into play. That coupled with the digital and computer age, past 1950s and 60s, you start to see aerospace and jet technology, Cold War, all of this mixed to even further the need and realization that the country and everybody is having, that we must offer specific career and technical education type of degrees. I mean, all of these pictures show different components that CTE offers, and to a lesser extent, obviously, the Cold War, and that would have sparked a kind of a competition that drove even more federal dollars and more training and realization of technical, especially. The role of women and minorities cannot be overstated. I definitely believe that Booker T. Washington is a founding father of career education in this country. Women have always played a role and continue to play a primary role in driving career and technical education, and they will into the future. Currently, the CTE trends are looking up. I think for a long time, the 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s, it was very much kind of a stigma of like trade school or vocational school being for a less than student. It is not the case anymore. People are realizing the deficiencies maybe of a traditional college degree, and coupling a college degree with a trade being a great career path, and like even integrating some of the college things that colleges are now going to have to start to catch up and offering actual skill training. Love Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs. He even has a scholarship. The federal government and the Trump administration has just recently passed the Perkins grant, a reauthorization of Perkins funding, 1.6 some billion. So again, and just the overall need for constant retraining and reskilling in the 21st century is a perfect place for CTE to be. And again, the future looks bright, especially as the high schools start to shift and change and add more career and tech options and offerings. And again, thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully you learned a few things about the history, current state of career tech, and the future.